So since you've released Mindful Nation, what has the response been? What have you found out? I mean, you're still in Congress, so it didn't hurt you there, I guess. But what have you found any more information? Do you have information about people using mindfulness, like to help, like you mentioned, the soldiers and that
Right.
sort of thing?
Yeah, there's a ton of people and studies coming online. It seems like almost weekly, where there's a brain study, for example, or a neuroscientist who has further, I think, proven that mindfulness can be very helpful to your brain and unlocking certain parts of your brain that you need for learning and attention span and working memory and decision making and all of these things. So that's good because the case keeps getting built out of the scientific community, which I think is really, really important. But you know, you see in schools, for example, a couple years ago, I was able to get $1 million for a couple of school districts in Ohio, in Youngstown and Warren City school districts. And periodically, I go and check up on the schools and see how the program's going, and really just to hear, you know, teachers in Ohio who may not have been exposed to this really take to it, and they're starting to ramp it up. For example, in Warren City school districts, they now want to take a program that was K, first and second grade, and they are ramping it up through the high school. They're developing their own curriculum. They're so excited about it. They're seeing the kids' behavior change. They're seeing their math and reading scores go up. They're seeing less discipline issues where they have to send kids, you know, every, you know, hour or so to the office to clog up the administrative side of keeping the school going. So that's been very exciting. The Marines, for example, have a mindfulness-based mental resiliency program that's phenomenal, and they're going to ramp it up in the next few years to train the United States Marines in a mindfulness-based practice, which is huge in preventing a lot of I think post-traumatic stress, building some mental armor for them, and also allowing them to make better decisions. So they have a really tough day one day, maybe in the battlefield, where they lose some of their fellow soldiers. The next day they're patrolling a civilian village. I think all of us as Americans want to make sure that they have the capabilities to kind of let that go to the extent you can of what happened yesterday, so that another accident or another tragedy doesn't happen the following day. These are skills we want them to have, the resiliency we want them to have. And then veterans coming back that are carrying so much trauma, they're really starting to use this program. And I've sat and meditated with vets at the LA VA and at the Washington, D.C. VA, and have had Vietnam vets who for 40 years have been carrying a lot of trauma tell me that they now have an obligation to bring mindfulness and these other alternative therapies, which really are mainstream at this point, to the new vets, to say you don't have to wait 40 years before you heal yourself. And it's just so touching to hear them talk about how they're reclaiming their lives, they're reestablishing their relationships with their ex-wives, for example, or their kids who they ruined the relationship with because of their post-traumatic stress. They're now out really talking about mindfulness in a very special way. And we now have a bill that's going to try to create 10 Veterans Integrative Health Centers around the country, so that these practices are available to vets, not just in LA or DC or New York, but in Ohio and Mississippi and other places around the country. And if anybody's wanting to sign a petition, which we're trying to push in Congress now, you can go to timryanforcongress.com and sign the Veterans Integrative Health petition to help us push this along. So it's happening in all these different areas. Many people in the healthcare field as well are saying, you know, let's try this mindfulness practice before we default into giving prescription drugs. And actually, I had a great visit a couple of weeks ago to the Ohio State University. They invited me down. Ohio State is not in my district, congressional district. They invited me down, and I met with the head of the Ohio State Medical Center, the head of the College of Nursing, the head of all kinds of different organizations at Ohio State. And then the Ohio State University is pushing out and studying mindfulness in all these different fields. I met with 2 students at the medical school at Ohio State who want mindfulness-based stress reduction to be a class in the medical school. So this is happening in places like Ohio. I think it's time for us to move with federal legislation, move with investments for the research, and really push this out across the country, and it can be transformational for all of these different systems.